All right, so everyone's talking about this right too. Former President Trump, I mean, we just sentenced for a felony, and he's about to be sworn in for a second term. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. We're talking about a convicted felon holding the highest office in the U.S. We've had a ton of reports here. ABC, CNN, CBS. They're all trying to figure this out. So what we're going to do today is try to understand how we got here and what this means for, well, everyone. Let's be real. This isn't just some political drama you see on TV. This could actually affect all of our lives.
You know, it's really striking how this whole thing, it really brings up this question of accountability. We're used to a system where if you break the law, there are consequences. And here we have a president-elect who was found guilty, but isn't facing any of the usual punishments. That kind of disconnect can make people wonder, does the law really apply to everyone equally? Or are there different rules if you're powerful?
Yeah, and it all started with this hush money case. Remember, those payments made to Stormy Daniels back in 2016 during the campaign. Trump was found guilty of falsifying business records to cover it up. The trial happened in Manhattan. We saw some big names, like Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, taking the stand. And the jury came back with a unanimous guilty verdict on 34 felony counts. I mean, can you imagine being Judge Juan Merchan?
Yeah.
Having to sentence a president-elect.
Talk about a situation with no playbook. The judge ended up going with an unconditional discharge. So that means no jail time, no fines, and no probation. Now, the judge explained that he felt his hands were tied because of legal protections for the office of the president, not for Trump personally, but for the presidency as an institution. He argued that because of this, he had limited options for sentencing. But this raises a massive question. Can a sitting president actually be held accountable for things they did before taking office? Or even during their time as president? If so, how?
So how did Trump react to all of this? Well, he appeared virtually from Mar-a-Lago. He declared his innocence and called the whole thing a politically motivated attack. He basically said that his election win was a sign that the public had cleared him, regardless of what the court decided.
And that's what makes this so fascinating. Trump's framing this as the people versus the system. He's appealing directly to public opinion, almost as if to say the voters have spoken, so the legal system doesn't really matter. And that has the potential to really erode public trust in the courts. It raises a concern about what does it mean for the rule of law when a president can just openly challenge the judicial process.
He even said, and this is a direct quote, "The people of our country got to see this firsthand because they watched the case in your courtroom. They got to see this firsthand, and then they voted, and I won, got the largest number of votes by far of any Republican candidate in history."
That's definitely a strategic move. By making himself the victim of a political witch hunt, he's solidifying his base and maybe even swaying some undecided voters who might already be skeptical of the legal system.
And while Trump is celebrating his victory, the Manhattan DA's office, well, they're not exactly thrilled. Assistant DA Josh Steinglass, while he agreed with the discharge, he did voice some serious concerns about the long-term damage Trump's attacks on the justice system could cause.
Steinglass touched on a really important point. These constant claims of a rigged system and witch hunts, they chip away at public faith in institutions that are supposed to be impartial and just. Think about it. If a president can undermine the judicial process like this, what message does that send to the average person?
It really makes you wonder, does this set a dangerous precedent? If a president can openly criticize and delegitimize the courts without consequence, could that encourage future leaders to operate above the law?
It's a slippery slope for sure. And it gets even more complex when you consider that this whole case came from actions during an election campaign. It raises concerns about the integrity of our elections moving forward. If candidates believe they can manipulate the system and get away with it, it could create a whole new set of problems for our democracy.
So here we are, with a president-elect convicted of a felony, but about to take office without any real punishment. It's unlike anything we've ever seen.
It really is, and this is only the beginning. Trump's legal team is already preparing to appeal the conviction, arguing that presidential immunity should shield him from these charges. This could drag on for years, keeping this issue front and center, and potentially overshadowing his entire second term.
And on top of all that, Trump's still facing those federal indictments,
Sorry,
which just adds another layer of complexity.
Exactly. Those cases are still out there, and if they move forward, it could lead to even more legal battles and even more political chaos. So how can a president govern effectively with this kind of legal baggage? How can he maintain public trust with this cloud of suspicion hanging over him?
It's a tough situation all around, and one that could have far-reaching consequences for all of us. Okay, so we're back. And we've been talking about this whole situation with former President Trump, convicted felon, about to start his second term. It's a lot to take in. And you might be thinking, okay, but how does this actually affect me?
Right.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into right now.
See, this case goes beyond just the legal stuff. It gets to the core of what we believe about our democracy, that this idea that no one is above the law, that everyone is held to the same standard, that's kind of fundamental, right?
Absolutely. It's what we learn in school, is what we expect from our leaders.
But what happens when that principle gets kind of bent? When someone in power breaks the law, but they don't face the usual consequences, it can shake people's faith in the entire system.
It's like,
Yeah.
if the rules don't apply at the top, do they really apply to anyone?
Exactly. And that's where things get tricky for the average person. Because a system that feels unfair, where the scales of justice seem tipped, it can lead to people feeling disillusioned, cynical, even apathetic. People might start thinking, why bother voting? Why follow the rules if those in power don't have to?
That's a scary thought. It's like this whole situation
Nina.
could make people lose faith in the very idea of democracy.
And it goes deeper than just voting. Think about your everyday interactions with the legal system. If people see a president seemingly getting away with breaking the law, it could make them question the fairness of their own experiences, like getting a traffic ticket, or dealing with a court case, or even just interacting with law enforcement.
So this isn't just about politics anymore. It's about how people view the entire system of justice in their own lives.
Right. And the timing of all this, with Trump about to start his second term, well, it adds another layer of worry. Because how do you hold a president accountable when they're already in the most powerful office in the country? What checks and balances are really left at that point?
It feels like this situation is really testing the limits of our democracy.
It is, and it's forcing us to confront some tough questions. For example, what happens if future presidents, seeing this unfold, decide to push the boundaries even further? What if they see this as a sign that they can operate with a certain level of impunity?
That's a chilling thought. And let's not forget, this whole case was about actions taken during an election. Could this discourage people from participating in the future? If they feel like the system is rigged, why would they even bother voting?
That's a real concern, because healthy democracies depend on active citizen participation. People need to believe that their vote matters, that the system is fair, even if they don't always agree with the outcome.
So we have a president who's been found guilty of breaking the law, but he's facing no real punishment. And he's about to lead the country for another 4 years. This isn't just a political drama. It has the potential to impact the lives of everyday Americans in profound ways. It makes people question the fairness of the legal system, the integrity of elections, and even their own role in a democracy.
Exactly. And the biggest question mark of all might be, what does this mean for the future? What kind of precedent does this set for future leaders, for the rule of law, for American democracy itself? These are questions we all need to grapple with.
We're back, and it's easy to get lost in all the legal details of this Trump situation. But I think what we're really talking about here is something much bigger. We're talking about like a fundamental shift in how we see power, accountability, and the idea of justice in America.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This isn't just about one man or one case. It's about the potential erosion of norms and institutions that have, for a long time held our democracy together.
Exactly. And we've been talking about how this impacts everyday people. And one of the biggest concerns is that this whole situation could create this sense of apathy or helplessness. Like if a president can seemingly get away with breaking the law, what does that say about the rest of us? What's the point of fighting for what's right if the system itself feels rigged?
And that feeling of disillusionment, it can be really dangerous. Because a healthy democracy, it needs engaged citizens, people who believe they have a voice and that their actions actually matter. If people lose faith in the system, they might just completely disengage from the political process. They might stop voting, stop participating in civic life, stop holding their leaders accountable.
And that's how democracies start to crumble. When people lose faith in the institutions that are supposed to represent them, it creates this vacuum. And that vacuum can be filled by all sorts of dangerous things.
Absolutely. We've seen this happen throughout history. When people feel like the system is rigged against them, they become more susceptible to extremist ideologies, to conspiracy theories, even to violence.
So what can we do if we're worried about the future of our democracy? If we see these warning signs, how do we respond?
Well, first of all, we can't give in to apathy or despair. That's exactly what those who want to undermine democracy want. They want us to feel powerless, to give up hope.
So we need to stay engaged, stay informed,
Yeah.
and keep fighting for what we believe in.
Exactly. We need to hold our leaders accountable, demand transparency, demand ethical behavior, and we need to support the institutions that uphold the rule of law.
And this goes beyond just voting rights.
Absolutely. It's about being active citizens in our communities. It's about engaging in thoughtful dialogue and standing up for our values. It's about supporting organizations that promote civic education, voter registration,
Hmm.
and legal aid.
It's about realizing that even though this situation might feel overwhelming, we're not powerless. We still have the power to shape the future of our democracy.
That's such a crucial point. This isn't a spectator sport. Democracy requires participation, and it requires vigilance. We can't just sit back and hope for the best. We need to be active participants, working together to make sure that the ideals of justice and equality prevail.
Well said. This deep dive has been a sobering look at the state of our democracy, but it's also been a call to action, a reminder that the future is in our hands. We encourage you to stay informed, stay engaged, and keep fighting for the kind of country you want to live in.
Because the future of our democracy depends on it.